Hi guys, my name is Ashley and I just returned from a 10-day cruise on the Norwegian Joy. Went from New York City all the way up to Canada. If you didn't see my last video, it covered all of the ports that we stopped at, so you can check that out. But today's video is really going to be focusing on the ship itself. I'll give you a complete ship tour and then we'll talk about my review afterwards, so stick around. For starters, it's important to note that most of the footage you'll see was filmed while in port, so don't be thinking your sailing looks this empty. Alright, Deck 5. The only thing relevant to guests on Deck 5 was the Splash Academy. This facility is essentially a complimentary drop-off program for kids ages 3 to 12. I believe registration is required. Deck 6 featured the Joy Theater, where Footloose was the headlining show and Bingo brought in a packed house.
Next number is
Q Texas Smokehouse is the Joy's staple barbecue joint, cranking out delicious dishes and great vibes. I actually visited several times over the course of my cruise to enjoy the live music. All around, a wonderful venue. Making my way across the deck, I found the small conference and card room, a nice little nook with some reading material and board games. Just a few steps away was the atrium and guest services area. You'll also find a Starbucks here, and this guy, he thought he was going to get away with that. Through the art gallery, you'll stumble upon Teppanyaki, a fun hibachi restaurant, and then the social comedy and nightclub, which was apparently the place to be every evening. Next door was the Maltings whiskey bar. And heading toward the rear or aft of the ship, you'll find the Savor and Taste restaurants, which are two of the main complimentary dining venues. Deck 7 was another hoppin' spot to be, as it housed the Joy Casino, as well as the other complimentary dining options, including the Manhattan Room and the Local. I loved the Manhattan Room. It was similar to what you've seen on other cruise lines as far as main dining goes, but could be a little shaky on rough sea days, as it was located in the back of the ship. As for the Local, that was located midship and had a cool view overlooking the main atrium area. Also loved the food they were serving up here. My favorite feature of Deck 7, however, was the outdoor space. This was where all of the lifeboats were, and I found that very few people took advantage of just enjoying this area. It was quiet and close to the water. Deck 8 was a foodie's dream, with almost all of the major restaurants and bars lining the length of the ship. Starting forward and working my way back, the District Brewhouse was a fun spot to be, with more than 50 bottled beers and dozens of draft beers on tap. This is one of several live music venues, but it was also a quiet little spot to enjoy midday. Food Republic was a trendy, cultural blend of flavors from Mexican to Japanese, easily securing its place as one of my favorite restaurants on the ship. La Cucina was just as delicious, bringing the classic Italian flavors to the table, but elevating the experience with presentation and inspired dishes. Because I knew I'd get my fill of seafood at the ports, I didn't dine at Ocean Blue, but here's a look at that venue. And right next door was the Cellars wine bar, which seemed to always have some sort of tasting going on for the day. The Cavern Club was the place to be if you're a fan of the Beatles, and really, who isn't? It was a packed house every night featuring live music and drinks. Just across the way was the Sugarcane Mojito bar, where you can enjoy those classic muddled mint flavors. Though the shops were closed while we were in port, this is where you'll find your duty-free shopping and also the photo gallery store. And beyond that, the deck opens up to its sleek A-list bar tucked between Cagney Steakhouse and Bistro French restaurant. I think it's safe to assume how much I relished in the food from these two specialty dining restaurants, because the only photo I took was a picture of the bread, and then my camera was down for the remainder of the time. With all of this happening on Deck 8, you'd think there couldn't be much more, but the biggest selling point of the deck itself was the waterfront. It was kind of gloomy when I initially filmed in port, so let's cut to some sunnier times on board. The waterfront is the outdoor space on deck, which takes up nearly the entire length of the ship. It complements all of the indoor dining options I mentioned with outdoor seating, and then has some bonus lounging spaces for your enjoyment. I absolutely loved this part of the ship, and you could find me here almost every day, whether it was reading a book under a blanket or grabbing a beverage at the bar. I also took advantage of the layout and used it as my walking track, since the actual track a few decks above was quite tiny. Anyway, it's easy to say this was my favorite part of the entire ship. Decks 9 through 14 were all staterooms, and then the medical center on deck 13, which I fortunately did not visit. One cute thing I'll point out while we're here though is that if you're ever confused as to which way you're facing on the ship, just look down at the carpets and see which direction the fish are swimming. They're always facing forward. On deck 15 we have the observation lounge, which I think is the closest you can get to the front of the ship. It's a great spot to indulge in a panoramic view of the ocean while enjoying live piano and snacks. The other Starbucks location is located up here as well. When you think of cruising, a never-ending buffet might come to mind, and you'll find that here at the Garden Cafe on deck 16. The cafe had a wonderful variety of food on rotation daily, and I was grateful to the pastry chef who was kind enough to share his banana bread recipe with me. Deck 16 opened up to an abundant outdoor space featuring pools, ping pong tables, chessboards, plenty of lounge seating, and this intriguing butt and boob statue. It was a spirited place to be by day and a relaxing place to wander at night. An unexpected highlight of this deck was finding a cruise duck. I had no idea what this was about, but quickly learned of the game passengers play with one another, hiding little rubber duckies on cruise ships. I'll have to pay it forward on my next sailing. Heading aft, you could find me pretty daily at the Mandara Spa and Salon, which included a barber shop, massage rooms, and a small locker room with a steam room and sauna. Just past that was the Galaxy Pavilion, featuring a number of interactive games and simulators. Deck 17 provided an elevated view of the pool area and was home to the small jogging track I mentioned earlier. You'll also find the American Diner, a classic retro restaurant with the assumed cuisine to match. Through the doors is the Pulse Fitness Center, a spacious gym facility with floor-to-ceiling views of the ocean. And just beyond was the Spice H2O area, an adults-only space featuring a bar, hot tub, and loungers. On this quiet cruise, it felt like a hidden gem, but I can imagine how busy it might be on a summer Caribbean sailing. I'll briefly mention that the Haven is also on this deck, best described as a luxury boutique hotel on the cruise ship. It's obviously reserved for those paying a pretty penny, and well, let's just say I'll have to save up to experience that on a future cruise. Deck 18 brought with it a unique cruise ship feature, the Joy Speedway, a 2-story go-kart track. While on paper I assumed this would be a little gimmicky, it was actually a great course with enough laps to feel satisfied after the experience. Deck 19 housed a small mini golf course overshadowed by the Vibe Beach Club and Haven facilities, which took up most of the space here. The Vibe Beach Club is an adults-only sun deck that is available to those willing to pay a hefty fee. It has comfortable lounge chairs and several hot tubs available to its guests. And finally, Deck 20 was the spot to be for laser tag enthusiasts. I found it a bit strange that this was placed in a prime upper-level spot of the ship, but alas, it's supposedly a popular attraction during busier sailings. For my time, I simply enjoyed coming up here for a nice view of the decks below. So I hope you enjoyed that ship tour. I just wanted to talk to you about some pros and cons based on my personal opinion. This obviously can vary from person to person. So I've sailed on Royal Caribbean, Disney, and Carnival. This is my first time on Norwegian. And the pros to me really started during the booking phase. If you go onto Norwegian, they typically have this free at sea promotion on their website. And the perks beneath that can vary throughout the year. But when I booked, my sailing rate included free excursions, free specialty dining, free airfare, and a drink package was included in that as well. And that was all rolled into my overall rate. Now I could take some of those perks off. So for instance, I'm not a huge drinker, so I didn't think the drink package rolled into that was worth it for me. So I took that off. That knocked down a couple $100 of my rate, off my rate. But really, if you are looking for an all-in-one kind of package, Norwegian does it right on their website. So you can see what they have offered and see if that fits your needs. Now, the second perk to me was the food on the ship. I did a lot of the specialty dining. The food was the best food I've ever had on a cruise ship, specialty dining or main dining. It was, in both areas, really top notch, and I was super impressed, and it was the one thing I came home talking about the most. So really job well done there. And like I mentioned earlier, one of the chefs even gave me a recipe, which was really awesome, and I'm happy to be able to bring that home and kind of remember the trip that way. Another perk to me was very specific to this sailing, but this was clearly a retirement aged cruise. I went late September out of New York City up to Canada. There were literally only 4 kids on the cruise ship, so it was really an adults only cruise. I was one of the younger people on board, but I loved it. I mean, I'm such a nerd and I'm really low key. I'm not like partying at nightclubs typically. So it was fun to be on this very low key, relaxed cruise ship without a whole bunch of kids running around. I went on a cruise in July and it was just mobbed. So this was a nice break from that. And I asked the front desk how many people were on the ship, and typically the ship holds 3,800. For our sailing, it was 2,800. So that was really nice and made us feel comfortable, and I would definitely do it again. Now, as for cons, again, this is my opinion. I'm a huge spa person. I try and book a spa treatment on every vacation. That's the way I spoil myself. But this cruise ship, I didn't look at it in advance. I saw that they had a spa, the Mandara spa, but they did not have the thermal suite, which is pretty common on the rest of their ships, or on some of their ships. I actually don't know the whole line, so don't hold me to that. But I know they have a thermal suite on some of their other cruise ships. They did not have it on this one. So I booked a massage, had an amazing massage, but then the amenities in the spa were kind of limited. What they did was, in the locker room, there is a sauna and a steam room, and they charged me $80 for the length of our stay to use those facilities. So I paid that, and I was able to, go to the gym, come down, steam, and enjoy the rest of my day for that $80 for the duration of the sailing. So I thought the cost was okay, but I was disappointed because I really do like the thermal suite experience that I've had on other cruise ships, other cruise lines. And they're called something different on every line, but I do like having that perk. So I kind of missed that, and I would say that's a con. One of the bigger cons that I think applies to more people is the fact that there are a lot of upcharges once you get on the cruise ship. So for instance, the Galaxy Pavilion and the go-kart track, those are extra charges. Laser tag, that's an extra charge that you have to think about before you decide to participate in that activity. Unlike other cruise ships, I just got off Royal Caribbean, Harmony of the Seas, and if I wanted to do rock climbing or zip lining, that was all free. It was factored into the overall cost of the cruise. So it's kind of annoying to have to think about those costs along the way on this sailing. So just wanted to flag that can happen. It wasn't a surprise to me. I knew that going into it, and I still wanted to experience those activities. I'm sure that's how they make most of their money, is people wanting to do that for their first time. But I didn't find those activities to be worth the cost, so that's why I consider that a con. The last con to me was the fact that there are huge swaths of the ship that are inaccessible to the average guest. And I'm thinking about the Vibe Beach Club and the Haven area. So Haven, obviously you're paying top price to have a suite on the ship in this kind of like boutique feeling section. But the Vibe Beach Club is just a section of one of the top decks that has extra lounge chairs, some hot tubs. It's a little more private than the other areas. But it came with a very steep cost. I think it was $299 for my sailing if we wanted to access it the entire length of the sailing. But honestly, there weren't enough people on the ship to really warrant demand for that section. So I didn't feel I needed it, but it was really, I don't know, I was a little disappointed that I wasn't able to just kind of walk in there and check it out. Specifically on the nights that I saw the Northern Lights, I really wanted to get to a part of the ship where I could photograph it without a lot of light from the pools and all that, and I couldn't get into that area at all. So it was just a little disappointing that there's this great spot on the ship, but you can't access it unless you fork over a little bit more cash. With all of that being said, I would definitely recommend the Norwegian Cruise Line. Just know what you're getting into ahead of it and know what some of those extra costs might be and some of those limitations. But honestly, best food I've ever had on a cruise ship, best sailing I've ever participated in, and I'm ready to do it all over again. So I'm curious to know what your opinions are. Would you do this cruise? Have you done this cruise? Let me know in the comments below, and I really appreciate you guys watching. Thanks so much.